Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. They mocked the new guy, without knowing he was a brutal fighter. When Darius Coleman pushed open the door of the high school Jefferson High for the first time, a murmur quickly traveled the corridor. This wasn't the kind of high school where a newcomer went unnoticed. The imposing building, its walls covered in colorful posters announcing clubs and events, echoed with the hubbub of students passing each other, calling out to each other, laughing. But that day, as the door opened to him, the tumult subsided. Not entirely out of respect, nor out of curiosity. Rather because Darius was unlike anyone else here. His black scarf slid over his braided hair, a stark contrast to the fashionably coiffed heads of the school. His gaze, downcast but intense, seemed to carry a weight few could comprehend. His bag, ripped at one corner, spoke of a life less gilded than that of the children of this affluent neighborhood. Every step he took seemed calculated, as if he were walking a tightrope between two worlds. At 17, Darius had already changed schools 3 times in 2 years. Not because he was looking for a fight, nor because he wanted to run away. No. Wassel and Suho had forced him to move. The silence of his comrades who didn't want him. The silence of the teachers who looked away. The heavy silence of ignorance that enveloped him wherever he went. He was different. Reserved, almost invisible. Solitary by choice and necessity. This calm, this absence of noise, was not a sign of weakness. But no one here knew that yet. When he entered his new classroom, he chose a seat at the back, where glances were rare. He carefully avoided meeting those of others, his eyes fixed on his hands, on his notebook. He spoke little, never raising his voice. Even when asked questions, his answers were short, almost whispered. In this noisy and self-confident world, this silence quickly became fertile ground for gossip and judgment. Some students interpreted this reserve as fear, an inexplicable dread of speaking out. Others, more cruel, saw it as a weakness that could easily be exploited. It was then that the choice to do enters the scene. Ryan, Mason, and Leo. 3 boys with dazzling charisma, sons of judges, successful entrepreneurs, and police officers. They ruled Jefferson High through fear, ridicule, and intimidation, with the confidence that comes from family wealth and a sense of impunity. Their attention was immediately drawn to this new man, so calm, so self-effacing. Ryan, the leader, approached, smiling that carnivorous smile reserved for prey. "Yo, have you lost your tongue, newbie?" he called out, his voice echoing through the room like a challenge. "Do you want a GPS to find your place?" Mason continued, miming a search gesture in the air. "Is he mute or just stupid?" Leo sneered, the last mockery meant as a provocation. Darius remained silent. Not out of fear, but because he knew that responding would only fuel the storm. This silence, this lack of reaction, was their first mistake. For behind this apparent calm hid a force that no one had yet seen. A force ready to reveal itself when the time is right. Darius quickly became the Iron Trio's favorite target. Everywhere he went, their presence followed him like a heavy, insistent shadow. In the crowded school hallways, they ruthlessly shoved him against the lockers, bursting into laughter every time he nearly lost his balance. In the cafeteria, their mocking voices rose above the hubbub of the students, accompanied by mocking gestures and deadly stares. "Hey, newbie, haven't you knocked over your tray yet? Don't worry, we'll take care of it," Mason called out one day, before Leo deliberately knocked over Darius's tray, sending food and drinks all over the floor. The 3 boys' peals of laughter almost drowned out the simmering anger within him. In the locker room, they became even more cruel. A brutal slap to the head, a deliberate shoulder shove, a shared burst of laughter as he took a step back, motionless, without fighting back. Darius remained stoic, almost absent, as if he didn't exist. No one saw Darius's fists slowly clench, his knuckles turning white under the pressure of the inner battle he was waging. No one noticed the small scars, thin but numerous, that adorned his fingers, memories of late training, falls, tamed pain. No one paid attention to his gait, fluid and controlled, too calculated to be that of an ordinary teenager. What they didn't know was that Darius had grown up in a world where silence wasn't a weakness, but armor. His father, a decorated former soldier, had turned the page on the war to become sensei of a discreet dojo nestled in a forgotten part of the city, a place that few knew, Kuroryu, the Black Dragon. Since the age of 5, Darius had trained there every night, in the shadows, away from prying eyes and judgment. It wasn't to become a champion, nor to impress anyone. It was to learn to control oneself, to master every muscle, every breath, every emotion. Jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, boxing, Krav Maga, a school of martial arts where every movement taught patience and self-control. Darius did not live to fight. He lived to never have to fight. But that day would come. A day when everything would change. One Friday afternoon, as the sun slowly set over the sports fields of Jefferson High, the atmosphere was different. Heavier. More tense. Students were going home, the corridors were slowly emptying, the locker rooms were slamming into silence, and the shadows were lengthening. But near the old gymnasium, away from the world, Ryan, Mason and Leo were waiting. Their silhouettes blocked the path like a trap. They weren't here to laugh this time. They weren't here for a quick mockery. They were there to break. "We'll make that mute cheapo understand where he is," Ryan growled, clenching his fists. "We'll show him what Jefferson High is all about," Leo added, a predatory grin playing on his lips. They had planned their intervention since morning. Chosen the place. The time. The absence of adults. There were 3 of them. Tall. Athletic. Confident. And when Darius approached the gymnasium, his bag on his shoulder, his step slow, his gaze fixed straight ahead as if he already sensed what awaited him, they did not hesitate. Ryan was the first to move. A violent slap behind the head, sharp, loud, almost theatrical. Darius swayed slightly, but remained standing. Unfazed. Mason then attempted a trip, seeking to publicly humiliate him. Darius slipped, bent his knees, but straightened up again. Still without a word. Then Leo stepped forward, fists raised, ready to strike. It was then that Darius finally looked up. And in that look, there was neither fear nor anger. Just an icy calm. Deep. Like a black, unfathomable lake. A terrifying void. He looked at them one by one. Slowly. And said, in a voice almost whispered, almost sad. "You had your chance." A shiver ran through the air. A beat of silence. And Darius moved. It wasn't a fight. It was Alash's inefficiency. Ryan, the stronger one, tried to charge forward. Bad choice. A step to the side. A twist. A sharp blow to the solar plexus. He collapsed, gasping for breath, his eyes rolling back in his head. Leo screamed and charged. Too fast. Too high. Darius pivoted, grabbed his arm, used his momentum. Leo literally flew against the lockers, bounced and collapsed, dazed, unable to get up. Mason raised his fists in a boxer's reflex, but Darius was already on him. One dodge. 2 sharp blows. A controlled uppercut under the jaw. Mason collapsed to his knees, his mouth open, his gaze lost. 6 seconds. That's all it took. And then, silence. Total silence. The corridor, now frozen, a silent witness to an upheaval. Students, who had stayed back out of curiosity or fear, had gathered at a distance. Some had filmed. Others remained speechless. Darius stood there. Calm. Without a scratch. Facing him, the 3 tyrants were on the ground, disoriented, unable to understand what had just happened. And for the first time, his voice resonated, calm, firm, clear. "I've never been weak. It's just you who never knew how to look." He turned on his heel without another word, his bag still slung over his shoulder. And in its wake, respect had just changed sides. The next morning, from the early hours, the story of what had happened near the gymnasium circulated in every corridor, every classroom, every corner of the high school. Jefferson Hyatt had become the unavoidable subject, the electric murmur that ran through the groups of students, arousing astonishment, admiration, but also skepticism. Some refused to believe it, shaking their heads in disbelief. That's impossible. Darius? The mute boy? He would have beaten Ryan, Mason, and Leo. They're too strong for that. Others, more dreamy, began to build a nascent myth around him. He's a ninja, I tell you. A real ninja who came from nowhere. Or he's hiding a secret, special training. But those who had seen the scene with their own eyes remained silent. Not out of fear, but out of deep respect mixed with astonishment. A heavy silence, charged with a new look. Respect had just changed sides. Darius was no longer that invisible boy, that discreet figure at the back of the class. He had become a legend, an enigma, a silent symbol of controlled strength. However, he did not seek to profit from this new reputation. He never boasted about it. The next day, as on the following days, he took his place at the back of the class, discreet and still calm. He always spoke little, always avoided glances. But now no one dared to laugh at his expense. The mockery had given way to a mixture of distant respect and cautious curiosity. Every night, once the school lights were out and the hallways emptied, Darius returned to his secret sanctuary, the small dojo Kuroryu. There, in the shadows, he continued to train. Without pride. Without noise. Never forgetting why he had learned to fight. Because he knew it deep down. Real power is not about hitting hard. True power is knowing how to wait. Wait for the moment when striking becomes necessary. This silent wisdom had become his most precious strength.